testing the sound. There we go. That's working. So I'm going to be here for the next 34 minutes, answering any questions you might have about making hand shadows, and probably I'll do a bit of practice myself while I wait for some questions to come in. And right now, because it's 4 minutes before the session should begin, I'm going to have a cup of tea. Thank you. Always practicing. And if you've got a question, now's the time to ask it. Pop it into the message and I'll try to answer it. Anything you want me to make or show you, or anything hand shadow related. I'm basically here to answer questions, so yeah. Can you do portraits? Somebody's asked, can you do portraits? Yes. I do a lot of famous faces. So if you look on my YouTube channel, and in fact, if you look at the link that I've put up there, which is my performance in Spain's Got Talent, you'll see I make one of the judges in Spain's Got Talent, but also Donald Trump. I didn't specifically say it's Donald Trump, but I just said something about presidents, and people, of course, understood because it looks like Donald Trump that it's him. So yeah, so basically, sorry, just put my tea down. When I make faces, I always look at someone, say it's someone famous. I'll try to find a photograph of them sideways, because this gives us a lot of information about their face. And in silhouette, that's what you want: the nose, the chin, top of the head, the hair, whatever the case. And I will draw the face so I get an understanding of what they look like, and then I'll start to make the face. And usually the bottom of the face is made with the right hand, because I work with the light over my left shoulder. So the right hand makes the bottom part of the face, which is all of this stuff here, basically from here down to here would be your right hand. The most basic way is to just make a fist like this, and you can see immediately the index finger becomes like a nose, and the thumb makes a good chin, and there are two lips. These two fingers are the lips like that. So that's kind of where I would probably start, but usually it all depends on the person's nose and chin shape, because if you've got like I made Lionel Messi during the week, because obviously there was the Football World Cup, and I thought, oh, he's quite an interesting face. So he's got quite a strong nose. So what I did with him was use the index finger to make the nose, and then you can see, just like the face I just made, these three fingers are the bottom of the face. I put the thumb down there, like that, you can see, to make a lip, to give him a bit more of a mouth. And then for his head, for his forehead, this hand goes on top. And I just played around with giving him hair with one finger. And also, Lionel Messi's got quite a strong brow. So it was kind of working on that, and I never really looked to make a perfect replica of the face. I try to basically give a suggestion of the character, so that people will recognize it. Because if you try to do an exact copy of the face, and then also it depends on your performance. Sometimes you've got to hint at who it is, and sometimes you're telling a bit of a story. Some shadow performers use a projection of the face so you can see what they're aiming for, which is also quite a good idea because then the audience can imagine. But for very famous people that we know really, really well, like say Donald Trump's face is very, very recognizable. So he is like this, similar to Messi, but I put my thumb at the bottom underneath to make a bit of a double chin. Now, at the moment, there are lots of gaps you can see, but when I put this hand here, like that, then those gaps disappear, and then you just work on making Donald Trump's face like that. And you can see what I've done with Trump is given him the hair, all important hair, and then the brow, because he's got quite a strong eyebrow, and that's Donald Trump. So that's how I make portraits. Some people are easier than others, especially regarding hair. If you try to make someone like, say, the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, her face is not so difficult. She's got a little nose and a double chin, so she's a little bit like Trump. It's like that. But the problem with her is she's got this kind of very distinctive hairstyle, and that's a bit more challenging. I have used, I've got it here somewhere, just find it. It's in my little props bag. Excuse me a moment. I have used, I made a singer who's from Cuba, who's got a kind of braids at the back. And that, of course, is basically, it's possible to do that, but it's not so good. So what I did was I actually made a little prop. You can see it. It's kind of little bits of wool with knots at the end all tied together at the top. And all I do is I hold that in my hand like that. And then very similar to all the other faces, I'm making a little loop like that, making a nose, and then adding the hair on to make this person like that. And then she sings. So she has to have a moving mouth, you see, like that. So yeah. So actually the reason why I decided to do this live today was I met up with a friend when I was in Spain who also makes shadows, and he's a magician called Gonzalo. And I was showing him how I do faces. And what I do is little finger and thumb together, and then the thumb actually twists towards the index finger. You see that? It actually goes there. And he couldn't do this. And lots of people can't. And I wanted to know if it was because I was born this way or whether it's just because I've practiced so much, because this is really useful for making faces and for things like the bear's head is like that. And even I even use it to make a little duck. So the duck's head is like that. And that's the same position. So if you follow me on TikTok, or actually on here, it's one of my shorts, you'll see there's a little thing where I ask if anybody can do this exercise where the thumbnail actually turns up and the thumb goes towards the index finger like that. Now there's another question, can you use stuff? I'm guessing by that you mean, can you use props to make your shadows? Yeah, of course you can. I don't use a lot of props. I think for two reasons. One reason is it kind of inhibits the flow, and a lot of what my style of making shadows is actually flowing. So I want to be flowing from one shape to another without having to pick anything up. So if I've made a horse's head like that, then I want to flow into a bird flying, and then maybe I want to flow into an old man's face like that. So if you're holding props, that becomes more difficult, and that's really, lots of people do hand shadows around the world. This is one of the things about my style, which is mine, that I flow from one animal to another, and that makes it quite exciting for the audience. So I do use stuff. As you've seen, I use this little bit of wool to make the lady's hair. And what I do is, so when I did another piece for Spanish television with the singer. In the beginning, she appears and she has a bit of a sing like that, and then she disappears. And what I actually do with the little bit of wool is I tuck it into my waistcoat pocket, because then sometime later in the piece, I have to bring her back again really quickly. So there she is again. So little pockets in the waistcoat up here, kind of here, really useful. So another prop that I use, I try not to use the things that are cut out. People do, and that's fine, that's the style. But another prop which I use quite a bit is this hoop, which I made. It's basically some coat hanger wire and some tape. Very, very rudimentary props. All of my props are very rudimentary. And this is for somebody to do a hoop dance. Now, when I started, what I would do is, so it's a little monkey, and you see, I've got this in my pocket, this hoop. And you see the little monkey, it's like that. And there's another little monkey, and they're doing this. And then this monkey starts to clap, and this one starts to do a bit of a dance like that. And this monkey gets the hoop, brings it on, and the monkey does a hula hoop dance like that. Now, what I used to do, I used to make my life very difficult, is I used to make it, bring the monkey on with the hoop and then spin it on my finger. But now, I guess you can see on the camera, you can see the hoop spinning, but it kind of doesn't look like, if you watch someone doing a hula hoop spin, they're using their hips. So the hips are keeping the thing spinning, or other parts of their body. I've seen some great hula hoop performers in London who have lots of hoops, and they have them going on their arms and their legs and their midriff, and they're just incredible. Lucinda and Amazing Hoops, their names are. So what I've done instead now is, because also the problem with this is you can easily, if you're nervous, drop the hoop, or it goes down your hand and you lose it. So what I discovered worked better, it's a bit of a cheat, but actually it's much better, is the little monkeys like this. This one comes on, hoop goes onto the monkey, and then you just carry on holding it and just moving it from side to side. And it's got much more of the movement of a hoop than when you're just doing this. Because generally in shadows, things need to be slowed down. Things aren't at a natural pace. So if I'm making a galloping horse, like so, this is my little galloping horse. The legs are moving. They're pretty fast, but they shouldn't be really, really, really fast, because then you basically can't see it. It just becomes a blur. And there are very few times when I use that more crazy, chaotic movement. I might make the rabbit when it's running away from the wolf. So there's the wolf, and the rabbit runs, and I use the hand to just suggest the blur of the rabbit's legs running, and then like that. So yeah, generally like the tiger that is running is like this. That's the tiger's body, and then when it runs, it's always in slow motion to suggest the legs running like that. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question. Something here, I don't know what it says, I can't understand that, but I guess it's good because there's a heart at the end. So another prop that I use this prop a lot, is this piece of string. I mean, the string is just so beautiful, because you can see on the wall there, the string has got such a specific kind of line. If you look at a hand, that's a hand. Look at the string. They say such different things. So how I use the string is for a camel. So the camel's got the string, and some people like to think that the string is the camel's saliva. It looks like a blob of saliva, but for me, it's kind of the camel's reins. And then what happens is, the little person hops on top. You can't really see it, of course. There's a little person there. He's a bit like the monkey, actually. Gets the piece of string in his two little hands, and then goes for camel ride. And it's a remarkably simple idea, but it's very, very effective. So again, this is a prop that I can get rid of very quickly. I can have it around my neck or anything like that. Yeah, so does anyone have any other questions? Those are both really good questions, but yeah, if anybody wants to jump in and ask, how do you make this? How do you make that? I'll be happy to answer. I'm going to have a sip of my tea while we wait for the next question. My pleasure. Yeah, so portraits, I'm going to carry on talking a little bit about portraits. So yeah, there are lots of different ways that you can make a human face, and it very much depends on the person's nose, the person's if they have hair or they have no hair. So I made a German politician a couple of months ago, and he had quite a large nose, a bit like me, and also he was bald. So this is kind of like making my own portrait. So what I did was I gave him kind of Lionel Messi's nose actually, and that was kind of right. So you can see all I'm doing is it's really almost like you're writing, holding the thumb and the index finger together like that on me, and then just putting this hand over the top to make the bald head. And yeah, that was pretty much how I made him. Pretty simple. So I have made Mahatma Gandhi, was probably the first bald head I really worked with. And yeah, what I did with Mahatma Gandhi, of course, famously he has glasses, and glasses are very distinctive. So what I did with him was something similar to what I've just done. So again, the index finger, but the thumb, instead of being there, was put on top, and that makes the glasses. And then I just worked on a little, making a sort of bald head and giving him a bit of a chin and something like that. I don't make the shadow often. And the big thing with the shadows is it's a huge amount of practice. The more shadows you know, the more you have to practice and practice to keep them good and to develop them and to be able to do them quickly. I mean, some shadow performers take their time with making shadows, and they're quite slow, and they make something that's perfect and beautiful. That's not necessarily how I work. So sometimes my shadows are quite rough. But I quite like the exciting thing of the shadow appearing to the audience understanding it for a little while, and then it gradually goes away again. I do listen a lot to audiences, especially children, when I'm performing, to hear what they're seeing in case I'm kind of way off the mark with something, and almost religiously they get what I'm making within seconds of it being made, which is great. Or they may have a slightly different interpretation of something, but they will always get the basic idea. Like the kangaroo, which is a shadow I came up with myself. Usually she starts on that side of the screen, so you can see where my fingers are hitting the light and the shadows, and then she comes bouncing across. Now it's so much to do with the movement, but also it's that kangaroo shape of the tail and the body, and then the kangaroo turns around and has a little bit of a wipes her nose, and then she starts to dance. So it's as much about movement as about making a shape that looks like something. And normally I tell her off, and she sends me away, and then she turns around and baby kangaroo pops out. And what I've actually done there, if you noticed this, but I've started with my right hand making the kangaroo's head. And it looks like such a simple head shape for a kangaroo, but in fact, to get it refined like that takes a little practice. To get it so that it's really beautiful like that. And then her body, she comes bouncing across, and then obviously she's doing her little dance, so then it's the hands like this. And then when she turns around to sit down, I actually switch hands. So I'm going to do it very, very slowly so you can see. Switching hands like that, and there's her head. And now it's the left hand, and the thumb is making a kind of pouch. And then out of the pouch comes the baby. And of course, you can see the hands are quite far apart because the baby's got to be smaller. So the baby's got to be further away from the light. Yeah. So any other questions? No questions. No questions to answer. I'll just keep drinking my tea and practicing until somebody asks a question, I guess. Oh, great. This is a good question. Thank you. I don't know your name. Sorry. What is the most important thing for your work as in a one-man show as a shadow artist? So this is actually a very good double question, because you've clocked that obviously I perform solo. Most of the time I perform solo around the world. I do work with musicians and singers and other people from time to time, but the majority of my work is solo. For a couple of reasons. One is I find that dynamic really interesting when you've got the limitation of what one person can do. But also, of course, it's easier for one person to travel from country to country. And if you're very reliant on yourself, you can create a whole show that then you can perform anywhere in the world. And then your collaborator becomes the audience. It's very much a dialogue between the person on stage and the audience. What's the most important thing for my work? Or things, I guess. Yeah, so this is a complex question. Discipline, I think, would be the first thing I would think of, the discipline and the concentration. You have to be aware of who you are as a person, because you're going to be performing, well, I certainly do, under all kinds of conditions, when you're feeling tired, when you're maybe not feeling that well, when you're feeling very well, when you're feeling happy, when you're feeling sad, and also in all kinds of different spaces and all kinds of different audiences and different temperatures as well. If it's very cold, your hands can get very tense, and that's a challenge. And knowing how to deal with all of those challenges, I think that's important. So being very self-reliant, having good equipment that doesn't let you down, my light, for example, also important, and lots of practice. Because the thing is, as you perform, there are times when you might be very nervous. It might be a very high profile event, like doing live television. That's quite a lot of adrenaline. And what you'll find is things will happen that you don't expect, like your brain and your hands will have a bit of a disconnect, and you've got to still be able to perform and make those shadows appear, even when you're really revved up with the adrenaline, or when you're very relaxed and it's a more relaxed performance. You just got to know that's how it's going to be. And I always try to do enough practice so that there's room for things to happen in the performance. I don't want everything to be nailed down because it's not live then. I wanted to have a little bit of space for things to slightly change. Unfortunately, because the shadows are so ephemeral, and the moment you turn your hand very slightly, the shape you see, it starts to change. There's a lot of space for that. So we've got another question. How long does it take to create a new shadow puppet you haven't tried before? Very good question. When I started out 12 years ago, I've been doing this for 12 years, which isn't a very long time. It would take me quite a long time. I was quite willing to take risks sometimes with new shadows that I invented myself, and then put them in front of an audience and see what the audience would see, and then I would tweak them if I didn't think it was working. Now, when I need to make new shadows, I usually have an idea of how it's going to go, because now I know all of the things that the hands can do, or most of the, I don't know all of the things, obviously, but I know most of the things the hands can do. So I'll give you an example. So I might be working on some songs next year. One of the songs is about a guinea fowl, which is, if you don't know what it looks like, it's a bird with a big round body. It's got grey feathers with tiny white dots. It's got a tiny head, which has got a very blue marking, almost like makeup, and then a little red thing, and it's quite a comical looking bird. And I thought, how do I make that? Because when you think about birds, you think it's got to be something distinctive. So if you make a swan, for example, it's pretty easy to see that it's a swan because of the long neck and the bump on its beak. So that's a swan, right? So the guinea fowl, I thought, I've got to make something that's got a lot of personality, because she's quite a funny character in the song as well. So yeah, I sort of started with just a basic head shape, and came up with that for the guinea fowl's head. Now that looks a bit like a guinea fowl, but it's not that adaptable. So then I tried to switch it around, where the hand, instead of the hand being this way, I use the left hand and it goes around this way like that. And okay, that was quite interesting as well, but still a little bit awkward to play with, because you've got to remember what is the shadow, what do you need the shadow to do? That's very important. What do I need the shadow to? Is it just going to be a static picture, or is it going to have to turn its head around and run and talk and sing and whatever it has to do? So then I played with making a head like this, with an eye, to give her a bit of character, because that automatically gives you so much personality. I just poked at my little finger to give her that little sort of bump on the top of the head, and now we've got something interesting and quite beautiful too. Then, thinking about the round body, I put my hand on the elbow and started to get something. We're playing with this today, so this is all quite new, which is it's great to see like that. Now this hand can also be a wing, and there's her wing, which is quite massive because it stretches out across the screen. And then there's a bit where she runs on her tiny, skinny legs. And I wanted to give her tiny, comical legs. So basically, she she kind of looks like that. And then she's running, and it's quite funny. And you can see this is very new. This is a new shadow, so I'm still playing around with it. But basically, it's knowing to begin with which position you're going to use. So you could be making a shadow like this, which is like a horse. It's a very simple, direct into the screen, kind of a wolf like that. That's quite a basic position. You could be doing it where the hands are on top of each other, like a person's face, like that. Could be doing it where it's upright like that, like the bear, or like a giraffe's head where you're doing something like that. You could even be, I don't know, doing something where you have your elbow closer to the light. So there's a line that I make. I don't do this often, so this might be a little bit rusty. But there's a line that I make where the mane is actually the elbow, and the elbow is very close to the light. I haven't quite got it right, but yeah, something like that. And then there's the lion's mouth. Okay. So it's kind of thinking about what is practical in performance, what can I make? And now there's another question. So to answer your question, how long does it take? I can be pretty quick. I mean, I thought about Lionel Messi, and I made his face in about half an hour because I had a reference picture, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do his nose like that and his brow like that, and does that look like him? Have you ever thought of making a movie or narration with shadow puppets? Yes, funnily enough. I've done quite a lot because over the years. So a couple of the movies, I mean, when I say movies, they're quite short, kind of advertising movies. The movies that I've made were to do with some sort of advertising something. So I made one for the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds in Britain, where they wanted to have a whole lot of shadow birds. The idea being that nature and protecting nature is in our hands. So I made, what we did was we filmed lots and lots of different clips of birds, and I made a bird's nest at one point, and then the little chicks in the nest like that, and then it was all composited together. And if you go onto my website, I'll put the website details here in case you don't know them. On the video page, there's loads of videos, and the RSPB video is there. But also, I've done ones for Nintendo, for Mario Brothers. Again, that was composited, so it was actually just my hands making everything in the video, including the lettering, and they then composited it and edited it together. And that's also on the video page of my website, if you have a look. So yeah, and I've done song music videos. I've done a few music videos. There's one on my website as well, which is really eerie, and it uses my head. I'm trying to remember how I did it. I gave myself horns and a beard. It became like a devil. It's quite a tricky technique, but that was one that I made. So yeah, and then I've also been involved in TV programs where the shadows they weren't completely the whole show, but they were part of the storytelling. So I had to train some quite famous actors to make shadows, and then they would do a cutaway where you would see my hands making. I think there was a rabbit at one point, and then there was a face, and the face was talking, and yeah. So yeah, it's quite a few different variations of that. Good question. And I've nearly finished my tea. But it's it's quite a challenging performance form. Sometimes when I perform with other performers and they're a singer or they're a dancer, I just think, oh, I wish I was a singer or a dancer, because they're very good, they're great performers. But what I have to do is, I may be speaking, I may be doing whatever, but I've also got to be making every single shape so that the audience understands it. And not only that, make it beautiful, make it run, make it do things, make it transform. And that's it's not easy, but different hand shadow performers across the world have different styles, and it's really interesting to see the different ways people approach making hand shadows and performing with them. And once you've practiced a lot, then it becomes kind of a habit. So it's quite nice to come back to something you haven't done for a while and discover that it's still there. Maybe it's even better because you aren't really thinking about it, because you've got to get beyond the stage of thinking. So any other questions? Any other questions? I've got any other stuff that I use. What's the other stuff that I use in my show? Oh, I have this. I think it's here. Yeah, this is really fun. So I make The Simpsons, and I haven't done them for a while, so they may also be a little bit rusty. I start with the clouds that you see at the beginning of The Simpsons title sequence, and then it goes to Homer Simpson, and Marge Simpson, the hairstyle, and Bart Simpson, and Lisa Simpson, and then Maggie Simpson. And you can see I've used a little dummy, which is on a ring on my finger, so you can't see it until it appears right there, which is a lovely little joke. Favorite shadow artist inspired? Your English is very good, actually. This is interesting. When I started, so the question is, who's my favorite shadow artist and who inspired me? I think there were two when I started that I really wanted to emulate, to not to copy exactly, but to sort of manage to do what they were doing. One is called Prasanna Rao, who passed away, gosh, I don't know, 20 or so years ago, probably. He's from India, and he has a kind of very, very simple style, very charming way of performing the shadows. And he was really my first influence. So lots of classic things like the flying bird that then lands and then he kisses it, which is a classic hand shadow routine. That was very much from Prasanna Rao. The other person was Raymond Crowe. If you've seen the Wonderful World video, that's Raymond Crowe. Now, Raymond Crowe is a magician. He's Australian, and he actually performs in a slightly different way to me because he has the light down on the floor. If you imagine the light is there and the screen is up here, so the light is like that, which is different. So some of the effects he achieves are different to the things that I would be able to do. Because I have the light at the side, and this is the way I'm used to working. I've experimented with other ways of working over the years, but gradually I went, this generally works really well in most venues where I'm performing, because I perform in lots of different spaces, and I can have the light a bit further to the side. So if I put the light further to the side, the light starts to get a little bit, you can see it gets a little bit longer. And what happens is you get a little bit of distortion, which is tricky because you're not always seeing what the audience is seeing, but it's also good because you've got certain things that can then be longer. So what happens is, because the light is here, you can see the light is here now. The light is shining across. So anything that appears on this side of the light is going to be pretty much kind of the size that it would normally be. So there he is. Now watch the man as he goes across the screen. You see how he starts to get a little bit, the shape starts to change a little bit, it starts to get a little bit wider. And that's what happens. So knowing that and being able to play with that is really fun. So I was showing you the guinea fowl creature that I'm busy working on at the moment, this comical bird. And the thing is, because this hand is close to the light on my elbow, when I open the hand becomes quite big. So it makes quite a good wing for this bird, and that makes her head look smaller. And then things like if I do E.T., if you know the Spielberg film, the arm goes across the screen, and it looks, because E.T.'s got very long arms, it actually looks longer than it is. So yeah, and again, the kangaroo mother, she she works really well when there's a bit of distortion, because she just gets a kind of longer jump in her body than you would if you had the light directly. I've worked with it directly and thought, yeah, that's not it's not giving me what I need. So yeah, so that's what I'm used to working with. And sometimes the light is tilted a little bit higher up and sometimes a little bit lower down, depending on the ceiling height of the venue and other things like that. Yeah, so I'm just having a look if I've answered all these questions. Yeah, it looks like I've answered all the questions. Any other questions? Anything anyone wants to ask? I've been working on a new swan, actually, and this was inspired by a shadow performer called Bablu Malik, who is very good, very different style as well to what I do. And traditionally, you would make the swan, well, I would make the swan like this, which is good. It's a good shape. It's got the bump on the beak, which swans have that thing in the eye like that, and the nice neck. And this is quite an easy shape to work with. You can make two swans. You can give the swan a body. The key thing with the swan's body, as you can probably see, is my hands are not touching. Because if I do make them touch like that, the swan's body is is a bit too small and a bit too nested. I mean, you could put it like that. So you want to kind of pull it out a bit to give it a bit more size, like that. So I've been playing with other ways of making the swan's head. I mean, there are tons of ways to make it. You can do it like this. It's quite a good one with the thumb and the index finger. You can make it like this, where you just use the fingers and the thumb. Also quite an elegant way. And I was watching Bablu Malik, and he has something like that, where the thumb is tucked into these fingers, you can see, and it goes like that. And then the body, again, the body's pretty much always the same with the swan. You can turn it around as well, make it like that. But one of the challenges with something like this is making sure when you turn it around that you have exactly the same shape. And of course, this way around, these fingers and the thumb are closest to the light. When you turn it around, the other fingers are, so you get a different thing. So that's part of the practice, is how many things can I do with the shape. And many shadow performers who do other things as well will probably just make a lot of shapes coming from this side. But I've always been keen to kind of create theatre. So how do you create theatre with just two hands? And it's kind of making things come from that side of the screen, or coming from above, or obviously coming from below. So there could be a man in a hat. There he is, and he's going across the screen, and then maybe he turns around and he's facing me like that. And it's really, really difficult to see what I'm doing, but it's obviously just my hands. And these hands, like that, you can see the face, are close to the light, so the face looks similar to mine. Somebody's saying hello, Ayush. Do you have a question? So this lady that I was showing you, there's her hair going to, it was in my pocket here. So one of the things I wanted to do with this lady with the hair, this is her hair, so I wanted to make her turn around, because at the end of the song, there's a male chorus, and I'm pretending to be the male chorus. So I'm singing at the side here like this, and she's in the middle, and I wanted to make her turn around. Now this is challenging, because what you've got to do is turn the fingers and the hair to that. So what I would normally do is, thank you, that's very kind of you, Yush. I practice very hard. So what I would do with her is, while I'm singing, my face is singing, she goes across the screen and then she turns around like that. So we just see her on the edge of the screen, but it's still the same beautiful face. And then I've got to make sure that when she sings, we don't end up with a gap in her face, because that would be a bit strange. So yeah, so and then she turns back again at the end of the song like that. So it's really a lot of it. Somebody asked the question, what's the most important thing for my work as a one-man show? One of the things is developing that sense of the visual. So you think of a very simple hand shadow like a wolf or a dog, it's like that. It's got a flat shape, and there it is. There's not a lot that can go wrong with this shape, so you can turn it a little bit. So like that. So you've got the flat shape. When you start to develop very three-dimensional shapes, like the rabbit, there's quite a lot that can go wrong with this shape. So somebody's asked how to make a shark shadow. Okay, good. This is good. We can direct questions now. So traditionally, when I've made a shark, I normally do the thing that you would see in the films, in Jaws and so on. You have the water, and then you make a shark fin. There are performers who do this with their fingers to make the shark fin, and it looks like that. So that's pretty good, like that. But I've always used my thumb and my index finger just put together like that, and then the water and the shark fin. And then switch it around and switch hands. Like that. So to make a complete shark, thank you. To make a complete shark, that's a little more tricky, and not a lot of shadow performers make fish. For some reason, there's something about the fact that we've got wrists. Of course, they're hand shadows, so we've got wrists. So when you make a flying bird, of course, there's always going to be wrists attached. If you make a dancing person, you're always going to have your wrists attached at the end of the person. And we just, as an audience, we understand that that's the convention. The same as puppets on strings have got strings, puppets with rods have got rods, and so on and so on. So fish are a little bit more difficult to see because we've got the wrists, and because generally with fish I do a crossed over position. So I'll show you a very simple little fish. So a little tiny fish like that. You can see it's got a little fin, it's got a little mouth at the front, it's got a little tail, and then it swims like that. So to make the shark, to make a full shark, I would always make the tail with my right hand, crossed over fingers like that and like that. The thumb is tucked in to make the tail like that. And then the shark's head and fin would be something like that. Now I actually make an orca whale. And whenever it comes on in my show, children always say it's a shark. So it's like, okay, maybe it is a shark, I don't know. So it's the same thing, that the tail is like that, the head is like that, and there it is. It's got that kind of orca whale marking there. But yeah, now what I actually do, which is a little bit of a trick, I've got this beautiful underwater scene that I do, and I do it with lots of different kinds of music. I use a jar, tiny little jar like this, which picks up the light really beautifully. And what I would do is I'd make some water, and it looks like the jar is floating on the water, and then that goes into the light, and then you've got this otherworldly. So you get you can make like seaweed with your fingers, and a fish swimming through the seaweed like that, and it just transforms it into something. So when you make the fish with this light, we lose a little bit of the sense of the wrists, and we get a little bit more of a sense of them floating in the water. We're never going to lose the wrists entirely, because that's just how it is. But you start to see something a little bit more magical like that. So why don't you do some concerts there? Whereabouts are you? Where do you mean by there? I don't necessarily understand that. So one of my favorite shadows, if not my favorite, is a seahorse, which is one that I came up with my friend Gondalo in Madrid. And again, it's in this little jar light, and it looks like that. In my country, I perform a lot in my country and in other places as well, actually. Yeah, I perform quite a lot in schools, in theatres, in cabaret clubs. Yeah, do lots of performances. Yeah. And yes, I hope I reach 1 million subs as well. Thank you. I have done some work. I haven't worked in the movie industry. I've done some work on TV with television companies in the past, always with TV programs. Yeah, not with films, not yet. But then so much stuff in films now is computer generated imagery, so maybe they don't need this kind of more organic kind of skill, you know. Yeah. So any other questions? Any other questions at all? So this goes back to the question somebody asked about, do I use stuff? I use some very simple things like jars and, as I was saying, bits of string to make the camel. This could also be a tightrope walker, of course. So, boom. There's a little tightrope walker. How about Darth Vader? Yes. So Darth Vader is yeah. It's a very simple shape, but it's actually very challenging. So this is how I used to make Darth Vader. I've got to just think about this for a moment. It was something like that. That's how I used to make it, but you can see it's not completely symmetrical and there's some problems. But the basic idea was good. So what I do now is make Darth Vader and his shoulders, his cape. And this is how it looks. So I start off with this hand, and then up comes this hand. And it's like that. It's quite a challenge because what you're doing is this hand is like this, and you're sticking out your little finger and your thumb to make the edges of the helmet. Now, if you think about Darth Vader, that's a symmetrical shape, so it's exactly the same, and it's very sharp on both sides. So to get that as convincing with this, which is very organic, the thumb and the little finger are completely different shapes, and they do different things. To get that exact is challenging. And if you're a little bit nervous, and sometimes when I perform, I am, this little finger starts to shake like this, and then it's a real it's a battle, and I have to remember to breathe and get on the so that's done. It's always good to practice. And then he's got his cape, and up he goes. And you can see it's keeping those things either side exactly like that. Yeah. So that one did. Somebody asked earlier, how long does it take me to make a new shadow I haven't made before? And that one took me a long time. I learned it from another shadow performer called Hans Davis, who's very, very good. And I thought, how is he doing that? And I sort of worked it out and went, I could never perform that myself. And then over time, I got better and better at doing it, so that now it's one of my more difficult shadows. So there are days when it's not perfect, but it's definitely worth kind of that practice and doing that position and just focusing on getting those fingers like that. So you ask, can I make some amazing hand shadows, please? It's my request. Which hand shadows would you want me to make? Can you give me some suggestions? Because I can make, lots of hand shadows. Anything, maybe your favorite animal or something like that. You've been subscribed. How long have you been subscribed for? Radical15. I don't know your name, obviously. It's just your handle. How long have you been subscribed for? Because most people started subscribing about a year and a half ago. Before that, I had a very, very small subscription, and then it sort of went in the course more than a year. Wow. Well, it's interesting because most of the people who look at my channel, about 45% of people who watch my channel are in India, and then about 13% are in the USA, and then recently it was about, the next biggest number was about 3% from Pakistan, but now it's 3% from the UK, from my country. So it's changed, it's shifted a little bit. It's interesting to see who's on. So you were in India, cool. Yeah, I've been to India 5 times, and I performed in lots of places: Delhi, Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Mysuru. Where else? Yeah, I think that's basically it. Lots of places in India, lots of theatres and schools and festivals and so on. Yeah. So I'm just waiting to hear which shadows Sumia wants me to make. Well, I don't know. 1 million subs. I don't know. do you think so? Be nice, but yeah. Something interesting. Okay, so well, here's something interesting shape. So I learned how to make a peacock from a really wonderful Indian hand shadow performer called Prahlad Acharya, who's very good. Another one of my influences, actually. I've never met him, but I've seen his videos, and it's kind of been hugely inspiring, actually. So the peacock head is like that, and the peacock's got 2 legs like that. It's a little bit like the bird I was showing earlier. The legs are quite small, and the peacock pecks like that, and then it turns around, and it's got a tail. Now, at the moment, the tail looks like a hand, doesn't it? So we're going to just do this and make it like that. And then something that I added on to the character, because it wasn't originally there, is like that. And that's the peacock's tail. So it's quite a beautiful, beautiful position. Now, that's what the hand looks like. It's not the easiest position, but I then transformed this into a flower. So there's a scene in my thing that I did in Spain's Got Talent where a hand plants a seed and then up grows a plant, and it turns into a flower like that. And then thanks Radical 15. Yeah, good to see you. And then what I discovered is possible is if you switch some of the fingers around, you get a butterfly like that. Really beautiful butterfly. So that's quite a lot of practice. This was actually, the butterfly idea came from a student of mine. I was doing an online course, and she was practicing, and she came up with that, and I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. Now think about a butterfly. How does a butterfly move? Its wings move pretty quickly, but in shadow that doesn't work. So we have to find another way to stylize something. So what I did with this butterfly when I use it is I just gently move the top 2 bits of the wing, and that seems to suggest the butterfly's movement. Nothing else needs to move. So when I teach yes, good. I hope you reach 100K. It takes a while though. You have to have a video that loads of people watch. That's what happened with me. I had 12 million views of one video, and that's where all the subscribers came from. So when I'm teaching children and adults as well, lots of people start off going like this to make a bird. And I always say, oh yeah, okay, well, you just asked them for a bird. That's quite funny. They go like this and they say it's a bird or it's a butterfly. Now the problem with this is it doesn't look like a bird, and the shadow is the thing that has to look like something. So this, we could say it's a bird and the hands look like a bird. When we make it in shadow, it looks like a bat, because it's got the ears and it's got the kind of sort of a suggestion of bat wings as well. So what I teach is, instead of going like this, which is also very closed, you can see my hands are together, it's quite a closed position. Start like this. You can copy me if you like, just to learn how to do this. Thumbs up, and then you open your fingers like that, like curl them out like that, but keep them closed. If you look at my YouTube channel, you'll find some exercises, and this is one of the exercises, closing the fingers. And then you cross the hands over, and you've got the very, very simple butterfly like that. The great thing about this position is your arms are open, so you've got quite a lot of space to move things. And then you practice curling your fingers like this. Then when you put your thumbs together, you've got a very simple, very, very simple bird shadow. You can experiment with the position of the thumbs as well to make different beaks like that, right? That's the bird. And then you tuck in the thumbs, open the fingers, bend the fingers, and you've got the spider like that. Spider works really well with slow movement. It becomes quite sort of menacing and creepy, and children love the spider. The spider's a big hit with children. And then you cross middle finger over your index finger, both hands, thumbs up, and there's a crab like that. And that's a little little more. This is so you start with something very, very simple with the butterfly, gone to the bird, gone to the spider, and then the crab, and that's a more advanced shape. The reason being it's quite three-dimensional, and if you don't have it exactly angled, you get that. So just by tilting the hands towards yourself, you get that really lovely symmetrical, sideways moving crab shape like that. So you're asking about a bird. Yeah, so I've shown you a basic bird. So the other way to make a bird, the flying bird, is a little bit more complex. Your thumb is straight, and your index finger curls around the top of the thumb like that. You can see that's the beak, and these three fingers are the wing. And what you're going to practice doing is bending these fingers down, but keeping this bit straight to begin with, and then you find it's quite expressive. You can make the bird peck its wings and do things once you've got that basic idea. And also practice making this shape this way and this way, both ways, like that. So once you've done that, then you add the other wing. Now the important thing, dangerous snake, I'll get to that in a minute. The important thing with the second wing is that you put the wrist, this bit of the wrist, against the knuckles. Because when I started, I used to have just the fingers, and you get a bird like that. And that's okay. It's quite nice. But if you put the whole wrist up, you get much more of a sense of depth. That one wing is closer to the viewer than the other wing, like that, and you've got much more space for movement when you're doing that. And then the bird lands, and you're using these fingers. You can do lots of things. You can do a branch and a single tail like that. You could do a double tail. You could do a splayed out tail. Lots of different ways to make the tail. And again, it's the same head shape and like that. A dangerous snake. Okay, so I've come up with a couple of ways of making snakes based on some things other people do and some things that I think make a lot of sense. So one way is to, a bit like the peacock's tail or the flower, is your middle finger and your ring finger bend together like that. And they make the eye of the snake. You could add a pupil to the eye if you kind of feel that would work, and that's the index finger. But I usually just do it like that, and then the mouth of the snake is like that. And then it's a lot about the movement of the hand to suggest a snake, like that. So that's one way to do it. Like many of the shadows, your thumb is not involved. You just tuck it in so it's hidden away inside the shape, and we want the shape like that. The less it looks like a hand, the more we'll be convinced by it. If we start to see a thumb sticking out, it starts to become something else. So another way that I made a snake is if you make a monkey's paw with your hand, which means not a fist, but monkey's paw where the fingers are extended to that first knuckle. And then you use the thumb as the snake's bottom jaw, and these two fingers either side, so index and little finger, as teeth. And that makes quite a good sort of cobra. I've seen people make cobras as well with hoods. So it could be something like this, but it's a little bit less easy to see what that is unless you were going to accompany it with something, sound effects or music or something like that. So yeah, that's a cobra like that. Yeah. And you can see I'm just bending my thumb to make the bird preen itself like that. And then, of course, it can go for a flight, and it can land on my head. So what else can I show you? Does anyone have any other questions? Anything else they want to ask? Any requests? We've got 4 minutes. 4 more minutes. Yeah. The big thing with making the shadows is that you can't practice like a musician or pianist or somebody like that would practice probably 6 hours a day. With the shadows, you can't practice that much because it's very intense. You've got the light and the dark, and it's a more intense thing to practice. And also, you're physically, if you're sitting or you're standing, you're using a lot of your body. I mean, I use a lot of things where my arms are really extended from the shoulder, where the hands are twisted. So it's a lot of musculature being used. So like the little monkeys, the hands are all twisted. You can see my hands are twisted around to make the monkeys. So generally, I wouldn't want to practice for long periods of time. I would rather do short practices. And most days, when I'm not performing, I would practice for at least about 5 or 10 minutes. Usually I do things like transitions. So if there's a difficult transition in a show, let's say the man in the hat going to the other man, I'll just practice that in front of a light and just have a little play. And then I might also practice movement. So I'm busy working on a fox for a show at the moment, and the fox is a very central character, so it's got to have a lot of personality. So the fox's head is like this, and the leg is like that, and then the fox has got a tail. And then what I would practice is I would practice making it run. And I also sometimes video so I can watch what's going on. It's not working perfectly today. And then practice what can the fox do. The fox can turn around. Then the fox can, I switch hands with the fox. So practicing doing that. So the fox can then go in the opposite direction. So yeah, I would practice that over time, and over time it starts to get easier and easier. What else was I practicing for that show? There's a woodpecker. So the woodpecker is also a shadow I've not really used very much, but it came up in a photo shoot recently, and I thought, yeah, I've got to start practicing this bird and making it into something. I thought I wanted to have a tree, because woodpeckers, of course, peck at trees. So I used my arm and then practicing the woodpecker. And that is it's a different bird, obviously, but it's using the middle finger to make that long beak and the fingers to make a sort of rounded body. And then I guess the woodpecker could fly away. I'm still playing with that idea. Its other wing looks a little maybe it's better like that. There we go. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. So I'm almost out of time. Thank you so much for joining me. This all came about because I was saying to a friend of mine in Spain about this exercise where you have your fingers, you put your thumb and your little finger together, and then you turn the thumb towards the index finger like that. So the thumbnail goes up, and it's like that. It's on my shorts and my videos. This position is really useful for making faces and for making the bear. And he couldn't do this, so I was interested to know if anybody else could do it. I found a few people who can. It seems to be a bit of a genetic thing, that I can just make my thumb go against it on both hands. But it could also be because I've been practicing with my hands over years and years and years. So thank you very much, everyone. And I hope you have a good rest of the year. And if you celebrate Christmas, of course, Merry Christmas to you. And keep watching my videos, and check out my performance on Spain's Got Talent. It was blazing. It was a great, great night. And take care, everyone.